Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical is considered by many as the modern field watch and one of the best overall value options for a Swiss mechanical watch at its price range around $500. Then looking over at Japan, you have the Alpinist family that represents a similar level of reputation from the world of field watches while offering its own unique history and value proposition in the process. So what I wanted to do in this video was look at these two watches, these two collections, with the Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical and compare it to one of Seiko's newest Alpinist models, the SPB243, to help you decide between these two definitive field watches in their category. Let's jump in. Now, before we jump into this video, if you want all things Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical, looking at a variety of different models, references, and just where it sits in the world of watchmaking beyond where we're going to really look at in this video, I'd recommend checking out the blog and write-up down below where we go into more detail about the Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical. Check it out, will be in the description. So to begin our video here today, let's start with the lesser expensive watch of the two at $575. We have the Khaki Field Mechanical from Hamilton, a brand that should require little in way of introduction, having been founded all the way back in 1892 in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, before eventually making the move over to Switzerland in the late 1960s. In a modern context, Hamilton is positioned beneath the Swatch Group's powerful assembly of brands alongside other value leaders like Tissot, providing a more attainable point of entry into the world of Swiss watchmaking for enthusiasts and the mass market alike. Hamilton's history with field watches is as rich as any, having supplied simple mechanical watches to the US and other military forces for 100 years. The modern Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical acts as one of the least expensive Swiss mechanical options from the brand, starting at $495 on a NATO strap, and then $575 for the newer bracelet-equipped variations that we're going to be actually using here today for our comparison for the sake of having both of the models offered on a bracelet. Starting with a conversation on the wearing experience, the classically styled Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical comes in with a wearable 38mm diameter, slim 9.5mm in thickness as a result of the manual winding caliber within, and a 47mm lug-to-lug measurement that ultimately makes this watch wear closer to that of a 39mm case. The finishing here, compared to the Alpinist we'll take a look at soon, is utilitarian with a blasted surface that exudes a subtle matte appearance. And while this finishing strategy is intended to support the military-inspired field offered by the Khaki Field overall, the absence of beveling and changes in surface finishing does give this watch a more rugged look. This is not a bad thing, but something to consider if you're going for a flashier presentation and that's important to you in a watch. Set between the somewhat longer 20mm lugs, the Khaki here features a 4-link bracelet with hollowed end links that evoke somewhat of an oyster feel, but with a split center link to mark a point of differentiation and matches the rest of the case in regards to its blasted surfaces. Tapering to 18mm, the bracelet culminates at an adequate but affordable feeling stamped clasp with 3 points of micro adjustment and a surprising inclusion of a folding extension. One point about the fold-over lock is that it is secure and will likely never come undone, but it is difficult to get the necessary leverage to undo the locking clasp, especially if you have short fingernails. Gazing through the very lightly domed sapphire crystal, which forgoes the use of anti-reflective coatings, the modern Khaki displays one of the most traditional field watch designs you could hope for, closely following the aesthetic format of military watches supplied by Hamilton to Allied forces in World War II and beyond. With a primary 12-hour scale and secondary 24-hour scale printed in white over a matte black surface, the Khaki dial is impressively legible, a factor only aided by the syringe-style handset at the center. Dial text is as minimal as you could hope for, with only the Hamilton word mark at 12, and there is no date window to speak of in this instance, complementing the strictly all-business look. And while the dial is loomed in a faux age off-white shade at 5-minute increments on the minute track as well as on the hands, the loom is not exceptional in practice, falling way behind the level of the other watch featured here today from Seiko. Turning the Khaki over, we have a simply adorned screw-down caseback that, paired with the signed push-pull crown, allows for the watch's somewhat underwhelming 50 meters of water resistance compared to some of the other just offerings within the competition and even within Hamilton's collection itself. Yet inside we have what is perhaps the biggest move of the Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical and one of the biggest incentives to buy a modified caliber produced by ETA that reworks the ETA 2801 base and modifies the gear train, the balance assembly, and more to reduce the beat frequency down to 21,600 vibrations per hour to extend that power reserve to a healthy 80 hours. Apart from the looks and the unquestionable history of the Khaki line, the movements that occupy within these watches have to be some of the leading reasons for many to look in their direction. Of course, given that they are manual wound calibers, you have to be sure to wind until you feel minor resistance to avoid overwinding the crown, something that is not a risk with an automatic watch as a result of the bridle that will help in disengaging the barrel and in turn preventing the mainspring's ability to be wound. I just mentioned this because this is an entry-level watch and we're dealing with these hand winding movements. Some people are just not familiar with this. These movements also feature a different balance assembly that eliminates the traditional regulating pins, which assist in areas against shock. However, fine-tuning regulating this yourself is going to be more involved than normal. Luckily, these Khaki Field models typically clock in with single-digit ranges of deviation daily in accuracy, with this example used for this review clocking in at an impressive level of accuracy at just +1 seconds per day when testing across 5 different positions. In terms of general specs for this Hamilton H50, we have a 21,600 vibrations per hour, 3 Hz beat rate. Again, hacking stopping the second hand when you pull the crown to the farthest position, and its power reserve of 80 hours. Now moving over to our other watch, another reason why I wanted to choose this Alpinist here was given the more vintage look and heritage design, and I think that's, when looking with the Hamilton here that's being chosen, I think a nice similarity. But officially looking at this more expensive watch with this comparison at $750, we have the SPB243 from Seiko, a brand close to the hearts of many watch enthusiasts, tracing its lineage back to 1881 in Tokyo, Japan. While the green dial SPB121 serves as the most modern take on the iconic SARB 017, without a doubt the most popular Alpinist format, this SPB243 calls back to the design language of the first ever Laurel Alpinist featured in 1959, with a smaller case format and vintage-inspired designs with more modern capabilities. On the wrist, the SPB243 is constructed with similar proportions compared to the Hamilton, with a 38mm central case diameter, a 46.2 lug to lug, but with an understandably thicker 12.9mm measurement owed in part to the automatic caliber lying within. Despite the heft, the watch wears true to size for me and well on the wrist as a result of the downswept lug design and curved case back, visually appearing true to size and therefore just a bit smaller than the perceived size of the Khaki. This considered, when putting on the 243, you begin to appreciate how thin the Hamilton is in practice, easily being the thinnest field watch I can think of for under $1,000. Compared to the blasted case of the Hamilton, the Alpinist is executed with a mix of brushing and polishing across the case, step bezel, and neatly faceted lugs, making this watch pop considerably more when reflecting light. Unlike many Seiko models, here we do have 19mm lugs that could present a challenge when considering the many NATO or miscellaneous strap options this watch, in my opinion, calls for. In this instance, we have a 3-link pin-adjusted bracelet complete with a small push-button clasp with 2 points of micro-adjustment within and some milled elements. In totality, the links of the Seiko are less dense than that of the Hamilton, yet I think I prefer the 2-button release format of the Seiko clasp in comparison, making both of them adequate offerings, which candidly are probably not always areas where these brands are going to be at their best. Mostly Seiko when I'm speaking to this. Taking a look at the watch from the front, the SPB243 relies on another slightly domed sapphire crystal, here equipped with an anti-reflective coating on the underside. Both of these watches though struggle when it comes to reflections, even more so with the Seiko when viewing strongly off axis, which is strange considering that it is going to get some treatment, but both of these not good in this department, so just keep that in mind. When gathering a closer look at the watch, there is no question this is where the modernized take on the original 1959 Alpinist is felt most. Set over a dark gray central surface, the 243 features rectangular and triangular raised and polished indices at its periphery, with a very slightly recessed printed minute track within. Managing time-telling duties at the center, the watch leans into a polished yet broad pointed style handset, which is, along with the indices, filled with an off-white faux age version of Seiko's category-leading LumiBrite luminescent material. And while not as bright as the traditional white lume on Seiko divers, the 243 does have impressive incandescence in practice, greatly improving on the previously looked at Hamilton. At 12, we have an applied brand signature and the depth rating printed at 6. At 3, a framed date window acts as the only other element of note on this clean and legible dial. Viewed from the back, the SPB243 offers an exhibition-style screw-down case back that combines with the screw-down unsigned crown in obtaining this watch's excellent 200 meters of water resistance, ensuring this watch's safe operation in all but the most extreme aquatic scenarios, and fulfilling on the reputation of the Alpinist and offering some of the best utility for the field watch category. Now, gazing through the mineral crystal on the exhibition case back, as opposed to the sapphire crystal on the front, we have a very simply finished caliber from Seiko in the form of the 6R35. In the last couple of years, we've seen Seiko doing a lot more with the Alpinist collection, including the updated SPB121, the successor to the SARB 017, and the baby Alpinist with the SPB155, 157, and 159, all of which have the 6R35 movement also seen in the 243 here. Now, this caliber replaces the 4R family of movements that have power reserves of 50 hours and gets the useful upgrade to 70 hours while oscillating at the same 21,600 vibrations per hour, and features hacking seconds to set for precise time. This, as well as other Alpinist models, remain some of the most compelling entry doors into this movement family. However, one of the drawbacks you'll hear about the 6R35 caliber is Seiko's quoted accuracy of plus 25 to minus 15 seconds per day, which is not an awe-inspiring number, with this one running on average at 14 seconds fast a day when testing across those 5 positions. Certainly not atrocious, but compared to what I have seen from Hamilton regularly, certainly not as precise. But now that we have a general overview of these pieces, let's talk about both of them generally and which one is best for which type of individual. Let's start with the Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical, just looking at some pros and cons. Now, first off, it's less expensive. It's probably one of the best Swiss mechanical watches that you're going to find. This one on the bracelet maybe is going to be against the purest type of perspective, because I think some people are like, this thing just doesn't belong on a bracelet. I think it's solid enough, and I think it's worthy of being in your rotation. It has this vintage look, the legibility's there, accuracy is solid, I found out of the box, and I think the bracelet in general is pretty solid. When looking at some of the downsides of the Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical, although I think there's more positive things going for it, it does tend to wear larger on the wrist given the longer lugs there. The loom also might not be to everyone's liking. And then in addition to that, the water resistance probably gonna be one of the main points of criticism for the mechanical offerings. You could go for the automatic non-hand winding options, and that's going to have 100 meters of water resistance. Frankly, there are plenty of Hamilton khakis that are going to have 100 meters of water resistance if you really do like that or say need that. Now moving over to the SPB243, I was really interested to take a look at this model. Although it's probably not my favorite Alpinist line, I think it's still very well done as a great everyday option in this price range, and has kind of this heritage look that I really do enjoy. I think this one certainly has some Explorer vibes to it, but I think the number one upside of this thing is 200 meters of water resistance is just fantastic. The loom is among the best in class when you're talking about a field watch, especially. Field watches and looms sometimes don't always have the greatest synergy and just reputation there. I'll just say that. Bracelet, pretty much on par with the Hamilton. It's just kind of replacing things that I like about it in terms of practice. The clasp, I would say, is improved compared to the Hamilton, but maybe not as solid feeling when on the wrist. And just the mixing of brushing versus polishing does offer up some elegance in practice that I think with the Hamilton, you're dealing with something that's more utilitarian, down to business, and perhaps maybe not as versatile in dressier environments. Moving over to some cons, or just some things to consider, I think the first thing that really stood out here was the accuracy. Now, I have tested many 6R35s. This was among some of the models that I've seen that are not as good in the accuracy department. I've seen these perform much better in the past, but just to provide an anecdotal piece of evidence, I think it is important to just kind of offer up what this one was really providing in that department. This is going to be a thicker case. It kind of has this bulbous nature to it. Partially, this could be because I was looking at the Hamilton right after this. It's not a thick watch, but if you're familiar with some of the cocktail times, other Seiko offerings, just know how those cases can sit on your wrist. These certainly aren't going to be the thinnest watches out there, and certainly behind that of the Hamilton. Faux loom here might not be for everybody, but unlike a lot of faux loom, it certainly is going to shine very well. And then you also have 19mm lugs, and of course, this is going to be the more expensive option. So with all of these upsides, with the utility, is it actually worth it in the long run? I'm not sure. It kind of really depends. I think if I had to break this down in terms of what you're going for, Hamilton Khaki Field, regardless of what option you go for from the strap or bracelet. I think that is if you want to go for what many people would, when they close their eyes, imagine what a field watch looks like. You're looking to spend around $500. I think that one's a no-brainer to go for. But say on the flip side, you like Japanese watchmaking and you really appreciate what Seiko offers, and you just want to get a piece of their history, because the Alpinist line in the Laurel family, I mean, that really is, before even the dive watches were on the market, that's really where this brand was known for first, and then of course shifted its reputation and what it was known for later on in the later half of the 20th century as a result of their dive watch releases. But if you value that part of Seiko's history, you want the upped utility of 200 meters of water resistance, maybe some refinement here too, just given that it has some mixing of brushing and polishing, it has a bit more of a pop with the case, with the reflective surfaces. This is when I would then recommend the Alpinist in practice. But again, this is starting to creep up to $1,000, so is that price difference enough for you to really make this happen? With the Alpinist family, I think for my own personal preference, I still like the Baby Alpinist the most. I think it provides a lot of the same elements here, and I just like the form factor. It wears small, and the lume is also very good, and I just find the dial very interesting. It kind of is closer to what many people would constitute as an Alpinist design, while offering a more minimalist approach to that with the lack of the compass bezel and the dual crowns. But all right, guys, that is my take on these two watches. What would be the one that you would go for? Please leave a comment down below. Would love to see that. Also, if you did enjoy this video, like these comparisons, please give it a thumbs up. Really would appreciate that, and it does help out the channel. Also, be sure to check out TeddyBaldassarre.com. We are an authorized dealer of Hamilton, as well as 30 other brands, quick and fast fulfillment, dedicated customer support, and also offer a full factory warranty for all the products that we offer. We do have a new and budding pre-owned section on our site with new models and new arrivals coming in every single week. If you're looking to move on from your watch as well, it's a great place to sell your watch. Fill out the form on the sell page, and if it's a good fit for our program, one of my colleagues will be in touch. But guys, thank you again so much for watching. Be well, and I will see you all very soon.